Here's our solar project. This is a 20 kilowatt array, which provides about 2/3 of the church's electricity. There were a lot of steps involved in getting here, and I would say that this is probably one of our steps along the path that is a visual sign of our commitment to creation care and our response to loving thy neighbor in the context of thinking of future generations. And a couple of salient points about that is that through the interaction with Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, as Rich said, that helped get our green team together as a monthly meeting group, and importantly connected us with a neighboring congregation that was working on a similar project and we didn't know about it. That's Edgewood UCC. I see John Baumgartner from Edgewood is here, and he'll be telling us more about his own congregation. This linking really helped our thought process and gave us practical information that helped our project move along. John Schleicher, president of the board of IPL, was the one who interacted initially with our congregation and kept in touch with us every month on how we're doing. Leah Wist is now executive director, and Jim Detchen was our Edgewood Church connection, who was our solar guru. I understand his son works for a solar firm, and so they've got lots of knowledge about that. In the process of carrying out the project, fundraising, and then having it installed, this turned out to be an important means of outreach to the community through contact with the local news service. Here's Rich giving an interview on TV that was picked up on the local news channels, and it was an effect that we had hoped would stimulate other people's thought processes and open possibilities about what we can actually do. Climate change is such a huge topic area. It seems that no one person can do anything, but even an individual congregation can make a significant contribution with this kind of project. Just fun facts then. This is last week on our solar roof. I just copied off the web information about solar production. These peaks and mounds that you see represent the sun rising and setting in sunny or cloudy days. Today started out very sunny, and the production from the roof just went up to 15,000 watts or whatever. So far, it's made about a year and a half worth of our church's average electricity. And this has saved a lot of CO2 emissions, which is something registered automatically online or equivalent of trees planted. And these bar graphs with the different colors show production of sun energy during different months of the years which we've had this running since summer of 2017. As you can tell, there are tall bars in the middle. That's the summer. From about March through October is when we produce most electricity. And for Michigan, that's when the utilities strain the most to produce electricity, because everybody has their air conditioners on during hot weather. And so our solar roof means that we are reducing the load during the peak demand time for the utility, which makes the whole network more stable, and it's like we're conserving energy as far as the utility is concerned. So that's just a couple of words about things that we've done. In a few minutes, after we've had introductions, I'll tell a little bit about how we've worked with other congregations. But in the meantime, what I'd like to do is, if I think there are at least a dozen groups here who have connected up. And what we're trying to do today is giving an overview of interested folks. So if you could introduce yourself clearly and give your affiliation if you have an affiliation, and a few words about what your current either group activities or personal aspirations in this regard. What we'll do later is try to figure out how we can continue the conversation with fellows who are interested in similar projects. And I'm going to call on some people, and if we get to the end of my list and there are folks who haven't had a chance to contribute, then I'll ask you to speak up. First off, though, I'd like Tassie and Sardar from the Islamic Center of East Lansing, if he could introduce himself and tell us a little bit about their activities.
Good afternoon. Thank you, David, for the introduction, and thank you everyone for being here. My name is Tassie Sardar, and I'm from the Islamic Center of East Lansing. David, is it okay if I can share a screen, or is that later? I can share a screen. Okay, cool. Let me begin by saying how indebted I am to the Green Team at the Haslett Community Church for their relentless motivation and dedication in engaging the houses of worship in our Greater Lansing area, and for encouraging all of us in trying to protect our earth and trying to go green, and in looking at sources of renewable energy. It was their open house, their persistence that motivated me personally, and to enhance my mission and to encourage our congregation to increase our resolve to care for the earth. Thanks to that encouragement, we have a solar energy system of our own. We just completed it last week, and I'll try and share that screen with you, some pictures from that in a second. Okay, I hope you're able to see my screen at this time. So at the Islamic Center, we have installed a 10.24 kilowatt system at this time, and we're expecting annual production of 12.5 megawatts. Our system involves 320 watt panels with a 10 kilowatt inverter. The racking system that is used is the ballast mount, as you can see here. We just got it installed last week, and we have 16 panels in 2 arrays. Together, we are expecting this to produce the 12.5 megawatt of power. So these days, we are talking about the contagious nature of infection and how we should avoid it. If there is one thing that I would like it to be contagious, if there's one thing that I would like it to be contagious by nature of infection, I think it has to be our desire to go green. Like I told you earlier in my introduction, it was our mutual efforts with the Haslett Community Church, the University Lutheran Church next door, that we motivated each other. So I would like to encourage each of our houses of worship to do the same with other houses of worship. And to that end, I would like to welcome anyone who would like to see our system at the Islamic Center, and we will be happy to share with you how we implemented our project. And also, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our next door neighbors, the University Lutheran Church, with whom we share so much in common. They have been very gracious to accommodate our overflow parking over the years. And in return for their kindness, on behalf of the Islamic Center of East Lansing, I would like to take this opportunity to pledge an amount of $25,000 to install a solar energy project of their own. We would like the University Lutheran Church to use this as a starter amount to challenge your congregation, to ask them to match the pledge so that you can have a complete system of your own and make you totally grid independent. So I'd like to once again thank each and every one of you, and I would like to pray for the safety and good health for each and every one of you, your loved ones, your families, and humanity at large. Peace and love. Thank you.
Yassine, thank you so much, and thank you for sharing that exciting news about your initiative and gift to University Lutheran. That's a wonderful segue. I believe Dale Ramsos is here with us from University Lutheran. Dale, could you turn on your microphone? Would you like to talk to us?
Am I muted?
Now we can hear you. That sounds good. Go ahead.
You can hear me?
Yes, very good. Talk.
Okay. Well, this is really very wonderful news that we're receiving. Thank you very much. We got started with this some years ago. Judy Kendall is our green team leader. And we had the good fortune of having Pastor John Schlenker be our pastor for several years. And he initiated some conversations with us where we got started. And our start was with the LED bulbs. I counted about 1,200 LED, 1,200 fluorescent tubes in the church. And we, over a period of 3 years, have been able to replace those. And we only needed 800 of the LED tubes to replace the 1,200 that we took out. And that has reduced our energy bill by 1/3. We are now ready to take it to the next step to look at a solar. And we are really, really excited about doing this at this point in time. So all I can say is thank you, thank you.
It was great and good to hear about your energy saving moves, which, as everybody knows, is the most efficient way to save, is to reduce your consumption. I believe, is Jack Dingledine with us from Faith Lutheran of Okemos? And if he's not at the moment, John Baumgartner from Edgewood UCC, would you like to join us? Just unmute your, I think I saw John on there. Keep working on it. We can't hear you yet. Let's see. Let me go to my, is John?
It looks like you're unmuted right now, John.
Yeah, John.
Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Well, I don't have any photographs or any video right now, but I can speak. Edgewood started this probably in terms of their solar plan about 4 years ago when we had Jim Detchen's son do a survey of our roof, determined that there was enough sun for solar panels to be effective. And then we began the process, and we've had solar panels now for about 2 years, and I think it's a 20 kilowatt system. And I don't have any data in terms of how much, what percentage of electricity we produce. We've even talked about increasing the amount because we have more roof space, but we haven't done anything on that. We've kind of taken a little different tack with our green team. We've moved to encourage the congregation to move away from a meat-based diet to a more plant-based diet, so that our dinners and our meals at the church might be more plant-based rather than meat-based, particularly beef, because of the impact that beef and dairy has upon the environment. I'm sorry that I don't have any video here.
That's quite all right, John. We appreciate your leadership, and I think we'll be hearing more about.
I don't know if Jim Detchen is on or not. Jim was trying to get on. He's home and he was going to try to get on, but I don't know if he's on the participants or not.
I see. I don't think I saw him on the tiles.
No, Jim is here. I can see him.
Okay, Jim's following along. Thank you.
Jim, I've unmuted.
Yeah, he probably has
And
more information. Jim is the leader of our group.
Say that again, Jim.
Can you hear me?
We sure can.
Okay. Can you see me?
Yes, we sure can.
Oh, great. Okay, because I can see you, Leah, but I can't see anyone else.
Oh, okay.
yeah, so I just was able to hear what John had to say. We did, let's see, I think it's now 3 years we've had the solar panels up. We had originally our ceremony to officially launch them, which was March 2017. We put on 70 solar panels on the church, and it's a 20 kilowatt system. It has the green team has existed more than a decade, and John might remember exactly when it started, but we have done a variety of things, including early on we did environmental fairs around the time of Earth Day, and we've worked closely with the Buildings and Grounds team to increase energy efficiency throughout the church. So we've done a variety of things over the years, but the solar panels probably are our biggest effort, and I think we were successful in raising about $70,000 from the congregation to install these. We made a decision we didn't want to go into debt, and we really had remarkable support from the congregation, something like more than 90 sort of pledging units of the church, and we were able to raise within about 3 or 4 months' time, $70,000. So we were very fortunate we didn't have to go into any debt, and the panels have been working well. We believe they're producing about 35% of the energy. It's been a little bit hard to quantify, but we're very pleased with it. And as John mentioned, we've been working more recently on trying to get members of the congregation to switch to plant-based diets. So that's our current project.
Thanks very much, Jim. I can't see all the tiles at once, so I'm not sure if everybody's here. Is Patty Warshaw from Shari Zedek on our meeting? Patty, are you there? Some people, I'm not sure about the ID. And if Patty is there or trying to get on and we're missing, if we could go ahead to Becky Payne, who's beaming in from Red Cedar Friends.
Hi, can you hear me? Okay, great. Well, thank you for allowing me to be a part of this. It's interesting to hear. We at Red Cedar built a meeting house about 10 years ago, and we had it LEED certified. We did not put solar panels on. We are buying shares from Board of Water and Light to get green power, but I really think we need to take it a step further and put our own solar panels up. Just not sure how that will go over. We have to discuss it and get buy-in. So I thought I would come to this meeting and just be able to have a little bit more information about what other meetings and churches are doing, and go back and see if we can start that discussion.
Excellent, thank you so much. I think you will be hearing things today, particularly from John Mirsky of Ann Arbor, who is our invited speaker, that will provide some interesting other options. And Ramona, I saw you on the web. If you could join us from Charlotte Congregational. Ramona.
I'm here. Okay, yeah, I'm from Charlotte Congregational UCC. Our green team is relatively new. We haven't even been in existence a year yet. And so our first projects have been the smaller ones, getting our recycling going in a bigger way, better and more recycling bins. We have a mug rack now so that people can bring their own mugs from home instead of using the styrofoam cups. We put weekly hints in the bulletin of things that the people can do. And I was always thinking that the solar thing would be down the road a couple years. But then a couple months ago at our monthly movie, we showed the IPL's movie, The Happening, the Clean Energy Revolution, and we bought it from IPL. And we asked David Arnosti to come and talk with us after the movie. And so he shared with us what the Haslett Church had done. And that was really the nudge for me to start thinking about solar now instead of waiting for a couple of years. So I'm really grateful to David for coming and talking with us and getting us going on that. And so we're just starting that process. And so this is kind of a good way for us to start looking at what it will all involve.
Thanks very much, Ramona. Great to hear. And the Charlotte Congregational UCC has a lot of enthusiasm. So I would think that's what we
Yes.
need. Is Leon here from Kehillat, Israel? Or do we have somebody? David? Yes. Let's see, you need to unmute yourself. There's a button somewhere that says unmute.
Okay, am I unmuted?
Yes, that's good. We can hear you, please.
Okay, well, thank you. Leon is our co-president and is on a national call with our national organization, so he asked me to attend in his place. A few things about our background. We had the Michigan Interfaith Council do an audit for us well over 10 years ago, and based upon that, we began changing our ballasts and tubes, bulbs, over a period of time. We haven't moved toward the LED bulbs yet, although that's part of our long-range plan. We have an active recycling program. We try to recycle the utensils that we use, as well as all the materials we use for our luncheons and other meals. We have we've created Michigan native plant gardens on our property with the help of Bill Schneider of Wild Type, who is a Mason based landscape designer and architect who uses native plants. He's a member of our congregation. So we've tried to gradually change the flora of our area to natural plants. We have a lot of trees, so it keeps our building cool in the summertime. And we're an old school building. We had looked into doing solar paneling, but we are not in a position to do that at this point. We did, however, get a grant to purchase solar panels at the Bircham Avenue, the Bircham Drive project across from Bircham Hills. So that was our foray into working with solar panels. But I appreciate being here today and listening to the work of other people. It's both useful information and inspiring to hear what people are doing. And I'll certainly take this back to our group and introduce some of these ideas for further discussion.
David, thank you so much. Exciting to hear about your native plants. That's something our green team has been working on quite a bit, and we have some dedicated members might learn some lessons by talking with each other. I think Kathy Lovell is here from Greater Lansing the Unitarians. Sorry.
Right. It's too long a name. Unitarian Universalist Church of Greater Lansing. And yeah, we moved into a new building, well, yeah, old school building about 4 years ago, and started doing a lot of in all the renovation that we did it as much energy efficient as possible. With all the new lights were LED, and we've been doing recycling for a long time. So we looked into getting LEED certification, but both the paperwork and some of the extra things we would have to do were too expensive. So we just did as much as we could without that. Last fall, I started looking into the possibility of solar panels. Actually, 1 or 2 people had been doing some investigation before that. And we figured out that the roof we would need to use for solar panels would be a west-facing roof, either east or west. Because we have a very nice large south roof, but it's going to have to be replaced very shortly. So, but we were told that we could use the west-facing roof, which would face Pennsylvania Avenue and be very prominent, and still get over 90% of the energy, which was something that other companies had not been saying. So we need to get back to working with the board and the congregation and having some more meetings to disseminate the information on that. Right now, we're looking at a model of fundraising that would involve an LLC of investors, like some other churches have done, especially in the Detroit area, with a PPA. And so started getting information about that, and we'll continue. And the Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, people from there were very helpful during that process in the past year or two. See, we've also been doing a lot with native plants outside of the energy things, and had to get rid of a lot of unwanted plants, but all the new ones we've been planting have been native plants. And we have people very interested in that from an environmental point of view. So I think obviously things have been delayed somewhat. We were going to have a couple of adult religious education classes of climate conversations to start involving the whole congregation, but that has gotten delayed by coronavirus. But as we move forward, we will really appreciate the interactions with other houses of worship in this area. And that I think will be very important in both the education and figuring out how to proceed. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Kathy. That's great. I did see that Amin Kutay, who is affiliated with the local Niagara Foundation, and I think with Islamic Center of East Lansing, if Amin would like to say anything, or if you'd like to be just an observer, that's fine too.
I'm mostly an observer. I am not representing any institution, but I'm from Islamic Center, and right now I'm here to just to listen and get some updates on this very good effort, and appreciate it.
Thank you, Amin. Ana Vasquez is a member of an Okemos Schools parents group with interest in environmental topics. And if Ana would like to represent her group or someone else who might be tuned in there.
Sure, it's Ana Vasquez here, and thank you for inviting me. Our group is very new. We exist maybe since a month ago, but we formed a green team group to offer ideas to the schools to become more green and to facilitate in the schools the potential solutions that the teachers and the school personnel may need to have greener schools. One of our goals, for example, is try to find alternatives to the plastic trays. And we also have solar in mind, but we don't even know where to start and how to go about it. So this opportunity to meet so many people that has done it already is super good, and super happy to meet everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ana. I believe John Sarver from Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association is also here. John, if you'd like to make a few comments about your group, its objectives and interactions with people, that would be great. John, you need to unmute. I can't hear you. We can't hear John. Let's see, Leah, can you help us unmuting John?
You know what? It looks like he's unmuted, but somehow maybe his microphone isn't working or something like that.
So, John, your microphone is not giving us any feed. So it's probably a setting on your own computer or laptop. We'll come back to you. Keep working on it. As soon as we hear you, we'll let you know. But right now, we can't hear anything. Okay, he's working on it. Another person whom I think is visiting, Jane Vogel, a former board member for Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, has organized a very similar kind of meeting, which was to take place today. That was going to be an actual people meeting, and so they've postponed that one. Jane, could you tell us a little bit about your Solar Faithful efforts in Ann Arbor? You can unmute.
Right. Hi. Sorry to be a little late. Yes, we have made some really great progress. This started as a partnership between Michigan IPL and Ann Arbor. And like someone said a moment ago, the model that we settled on was that PPA model. And we have 4, if not 5 congregations or nonprofits who have now implemented this model, and 4 of them have the solar installations complete. It's basically bringing groups of congregants or investors together. John Sardar is going to talk more about this for the Ozone House. Bringing a group of investors together, starting an LLC, initiating a PPA as a means of financing the solar installation. The houses of worship that did this last year were able to benefit from the full 30% federal tax credit. That credit has tapered down to 26% this year, but that is still significant. I want to specifically recognize the Genesis community, which is a facility that 2 different congregations share. They have installed completed a very large solar installation and are documenting their process, which is just great. We have the legal templates that we can share, and now we have the process documented. And our intention is to share that at a Solar Faithful workshop that we've now deferred to, I think we picked May 31st. And at that workshop, we'll go through the success stories of these initial installations, understand the specifics of this PPA model, and really benefit from those lessons learned. So if any of you would like to join us, you would be most welcome. And I think a communication to either myself or Leah Wisty is a good way to make that connection.
Thank you, Jane. And at the end of the meeting, we will check and see if people would like to share their email contact. I think I did group emails just to facilitate getting in touch with people. So hold on to that thought. Is there anybody representing another congregation or group? Yes, Sarah. I can see you holding up your hand. Could you introduce yourself and give us some information?
Hi, my name is Sarah Allen. I was invited from Anna through the Meridian Green team, but I'm also kind of threefold here. I'm the pastor at the Community of Christ. We have a couple congregations in the community. Mine is, there's 3 pastorates, 3 people on the pastorate. We've been part of it and have our own green team as well. We did the solar panels through BWL. So we bought 32 of those, and so that covers our entire congregation's energy. We've had that for a couple of years, and so we have done it through that way. We did the full LED bulbs throughout the congregation. Our potlucks, we bring in our own serviceware, tableware, so we don't have to throw anything away and recycle, that kind of thing. Change our thermostats. We've got motion lights in the bathrooms, and we've done, we're working on a butterfly garden. So we've done a lot of things for part of the green team. I'm also here, like I said, I was invited through the Meridian Green team that just started because I'm on the committee for the Okemos School District that is working on being better environmentally through the actual school and that way. But my congregation is part of IPL, so I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Great, fantastic, Sarah. Very good that you could give us your 3 different hats perspective. I think that's true for probably many people involved in these projects. Is there anybody else? John Schleicher has his hand up.
Yeah, I am too.
First
Judy.
John, and then Judy.
Hi, I'm John Schleicher, and I kind of have, I guess, two hats today. One is chair of the board of Michigan IPL, and that's been challenging and wonderful, I would say. I'm serving right now as the interim at Grace Lutheran on Martin Luther King Boulevard in Lansing. Probably a year ago, we decided to pretty much complete another section of our building with insulated glass. Some of that had been done. We still have some more to do. We were able, with a grant from Board of Water and Light, to do complete LED. We thought there would be a balance for us, but to their generosity, and we were toward the end of the year that they had money left and said, we're just going to cover that. So we're completely LED in our electric bill. Tomorrow, weather permitting and workforce available, the solar installation will be installed. It's expected to cover, if the specs are accurate and the weather and sun cooperates, about 99% of our electric needs. It'll be 49 panels on our south-facing roof. We looked at the PPA, decided that with partially a bequest that had come to the congregation, which was undesignated, and I think a pretty large interest in the congregation, we're just shy of the roughly $37,500 cost now, which shows you how prices have come down in the last 3 or 4 years. So I just had a call yesterday or on Friday from the installer Absolute Environmental Solutions here in Lansing that they're planning to start their installation on Monday. So we've got more to do, but I'm pretty excited about what has happened at Grace. So that's kind of our input for now.
Very good. Thanks so much, John Schleicher. Judy Kindle from University Lutheran. Yes, please.
Hi, I'll be very brief. Our earthkeeping team has been working together for about 13 years now, and I won't go through what we've done, but I'm so happy to hear about what everybody is doing at this time. I want to say thank you to Thason for the challenge, and we certainly will take you up on the challenge. And I'd like to say thank you to Haslett community for getting everybody together, because it's nice to know that there are other people and we're all working for the same outcome. I just wanted to mention in closing that it's very, very important, no matter what we do on the local level, that we somehow have to reach out to our leaders at the local and national levels to be able to get some of the very important work done toward climate change. And with that, I will stop talking. Thanks.
Judy, thank you very much. I can't see everybody's hands, so if you would also like to make a contribution and I can't see your hand, please turn on your microphone and then just say hello. And if we don't have any other hellos, then I would like to move to the next part of our meeting, which, let's see, here we go. Back to Zoom and share screen. So one of the most important things of networking like this is being able to exchange useful information, tips, contacts, research to promote it. As Jane was saying, they have a format for these PPAs. We'll hear more about that. That's such an aid to somebody who's thinking about it and doesn't have the background yet. At the same time, in addition to facilitating individual efforts, which can motivate and certainly drive innovation in our own communities, I think it's really important to identify ways that groups of particularly houses of worship can link together. We have a unique perspective in our society in the issue of why do we care about the environment and climate and future generations. A perspective that goes beyond how many cents the utilities will be making for feedback and things like that. And that gives us motivation and a platform from which we should be saying something. It's probably, for sure, it's unfortunate if the only religious voices that are heard in the public domain are those that are negative and shutting down and looking away from possibilities for the future. We need to have some, we need the voices of very many active communities to be public. And so our church has worked with the Islamic Center and University Lutheran on one such project, which involved, first of all, connection with consumers' energy that was made possible through Michigan IPL. We banded together and agreed to set up home energy audits with the goal of having enough families, and Rich drove this program here at HCC, so that the utility would then audit homes, identify ways to save energy, and then give us a check, which we did. And at the end of this program, consumer said, congratulations, you've helped us do what we're mandated to do by the state law, that is improve energy efficiency. Here's $500. And so we said, so that's $167.33 per congregation. What are we gonna, what are we gonna do? We decided to use that as a challenge grant to do something bigger. And what we did is we identified a local nonprofit, Haven House, which helps homeless families. They have a facility behind the post office in East Lansing. We partnered with Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, which has a carbon fund, and the carbon fund was actually funded by Ann Arbor Friends. So the Quaker meeting in Ann Arbor taxed themselves a carbon tax, gave the money to Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, and said, use this in innovative ways. And so we decided to do a fundraiser and asked Michigan IPL to match it 1-for-1 from their carbon fund. And in the end, we raised $5,500 so that Haven House could carry out necessary energy rehab projects, including insulation and so forth. And last fall, we gave them a big check, and Leah was there with Michigan Interfaith Power and Light, and the press was there, the TV stations came, and people watching the news saw these 3 local houses of worship working with IPL to benefit a nonprofit that definitely benefits everybody in the community. One of my coworkers said, that's the kind of project I'd like to see, where you get something done. So I wanted to see if we could perhaps think about ways that we could build at a larger scale. So in talking with some of the local congregations, we have linked up on different efforts. Last October, Grace Lutheran in Okemos sponsored the showing of Paris to Pittsburgh, and a bunch of us local churches supported that and got the word out, and that was something that was pretty easy to do. We've also, our own green team has invited, here's Dave Polly from Webster United Church of Christ in Dexter, Michigan, talking about the importance of soils and carbon sequestration. That was a special presentation here at the church. So we wanted to see if we could identify bigger projects that would have larger impact and how that could work. And let's see. So the juices are flowing, and I made a contact through the annual meeting of Great Lakes Renewable Energy Association, which John Sarver chairs. That's John Mursky, who is an energy consultant in Ann Arbor. And John, could you unmute your microphone?
Can you hear me?
Yes, that's good. So John is going to tell us about a bigger kind of project, which the model is these preferred power arrangements, which may be a way that some of us could get together and have an impact, particularly with respect to considering renewable energy for the future. If this is not going to be just a matter of the Volvo or Tesla set, but really benefiting low-income communities as well, how could we do that? And so, John, I'm turning things over to you. You can share your screen.
Okay. Before I do that, maybe just, well, I'll go ahead and share my screen. And, oops, let's see. I don't want that. Oh, here, this is what I want to share here. So do you see the PowerPoint?
Yes, we do.
Great. Okay, so first I thought I should introduce myself. I'm a resident of Ann Arbor. I'm retired after a career in industry, and I'm now a civic volunteer and activist, mostly in the environmental area. I've got a couple of roles at the city, and I'm also involved in trying to push the University of Michigan towards carbon neutrality. So before I get into the slides, I thought it made sense that I share some of the motivations for me speaking today and for my and my partner's work. First of all, we wanted to, like the rest of you, put our values into practice. We wanted to support local climate actions. Some of you may have heard that Ann Arbor last November declared a climate emergency and set a target for carbon neutrality by 2030. And to be able to do that, obviously it's going to take both collective as well as individual action. What we're doing here is we are applying the Michigan IPL Solar Faithful model to a nonprofit. As has been mentioned already, there are several houses of worship in Ann Arbor that are applying the model, and we hope that together we will be paving the way for any range of nonprofits or a wide range of nonprofits to apply it across the state of Michigan and hopefully beyond. And what I'm going to do today is share our best practices and our lessons learned. And our goal is to see solar distributed energy production replicated across the state with its broad social, environmental, resiliency, and even financial benefits. So what I'm going to do is go through a set of slides that I prepared. The slides are admittedly very text dense, and I'm only going to cover some of the key points. But as Leah just messaged us earlier, all of these are going to be available for everybody to look at. So I'm not going to get into any detail. My contact information is on the last slide. I encourage you to take a look at the slides. There's also speaker's notes that illuminate some points. And finally, I would recommend that you hold your questions and comments to the end. Hopefully, I'll address most of your questions in my slides as we go through them. There are small page numbers in the lower right-hand corner, so you can note those if you have a question. And I think Leah's going to be monitoring chat to be able to give me then input on questions or comments that you might have. So let me go ahead and launch into this. So the application of this is really very wide. What we are doing is we wanted to be able to take advantage of the federal tax credit, plus actually also depreciation that is not available to nonprofits. And so what this model does is it provides an alternate infrastructure or structure to solve this financial incentive problem. And it's applicable to all nonprofits. It's applicable to any NGO. It's applicable to houses of worship, schools, both public and private, even government buildings. So we think that this power purchase agreement approach that's embedded in the Michigan IPL model is really something that a wide range of organizations can take advantage of. And we hope that you, through your networks, can share this with other people. So we had a number of different partners in this. The first and major partner is Ozone House. Ozone House is a community-based nonprofit that serves and provides support, intervention, training, and assistance to runaway homeless and high-risk youth here in the greater Ann Arbor, Ypsilanti area. And they are serving as the host for the solar system, and they purchase the energy generated by the system. And this is a picture of the brand new facility, and you can see the solar on two different sections of the roof, both in the front on the sloped roof as well as in the back on a flat roof. So I'm a member of a small limited liability company that we formed. We are the owner of the solar system and we operate it. There are 4 of us that basically got together and took money that we had invested in essentially retirement funds and said, hey, this is a way that we can use that money in a fashion that we think is, as I said, more in keeping with our values and to do a lot of good in the process. So these are the various people that are involved. It's just the 4 of us. The model could be 2 people, the model could be 200 people. So this is something that could be expanded depending on the size or the interest of the various people that would be involved with the partner. We also then worked with our solar installer, which is Distributed Power LLC. They're out of Ferndale, and they did the solar installation for us. They also did some solar installation training to current Ozone House residents and alumni with support of Dave Strensky of Solar Ipsy. So we had a whole bunch of people involved in this. So this is a schematic of what is basically going on here. I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but basically you can see that when the sun shines on our solar array, that solar array feeds through a smart meter. Ozone House, we expect that the array that we installed, and I'll get into the details on that, is going to supply only about 30% of the electrical needs of Ozone House, but it could be that on certain days that exceeds the demand, the production, and in that case, that extra energy flows into the grid to DTE. So that can be bidirectional, but most of the time it's going to be feeding through the smart meter directly and meeting Ozone House's needs. So that's the electrical side. On the money side, we have Ozone House Solar LLC. That's the 4 of us that I mentioned. We own the solar array that's on the right. And Ozone House pays us for the energy that comes out of that solar array. And I'll get into the details of that. So they're paying us for that energy. We, of course, worked with Distributed Power to install it. So there's a one-time cash flow there that we made when we paid for the installation. Ozone House is paying DTE for the rest of its energy. And in the case where it's very seldom, but in the case where the array is producing more than what it would be needed by the house, then there's a credit that's basically applied to DTE or to Ozone House's bill. And then finally, on an annual basis, our little LLC has to submit taxes to the IRS. So that's an overview of the relationships and the flows in terms of money as well as electricity. So we think there's a whole bunch of win-win outcomes for all the partners here. First of all, Ozone House is going to be receiving electricity from us at a 10% reduction versus its current rate that it would be paying the local utility DTE. Because it's working through us, in a sense, it indirectly receives the benefit of the 30% tax rebate and depreciation. As mentioned, that tax rebate is declining now. It's 26% this year, drops to 22% in the following year, and eventually goes down to 10% for commercial entities. And then there's also the opportunity simply to educate people about solar energy and the benefits of solar energy. From our perspective in the LLC, this is basically what you might call a triple bottom line perspective. So it benefits people and the planet, but also it generates a low risk, low yield profit. And we have to do that because we're taking advantage of the tax credit from the company, or from the federal government, and that LLC has to make a profit, and I'll get into that in a little bit later. So obviously we're benefiting a partner in the social justice domain. We are reducing greenhouse gases and other emissions by replacing gray DTE power with clean renewable energy. And important to us, we've developed a model, or further developed a model, and lessons learned for others' use. Distributed power also has a benefit. They got a high visibility, moderate sized project. And they were also able, through training, to be able to identify high quality, reliable future workers. And those workers, potential workers, came from Ozone House. So they have current residents and some alumni that participated in training, and they were able to try out a trade related job. And by working alongside distributed power employees, they were able to show that they were reliable people and that they potentially could be future employees for distributed power. And then, of course, there are local economic benefits as well as environmental benefits. So this is our timeline. I'm not going to go into each one of the steps, but the Solar Faithful investment model has been conceived and developed over the last 2 years. It basically originated here in Ann Arbor with work and support from Michigan IPL. And I was involved with that early on. And as was Jan Culbertson, our LLC CEO. By the way, her role is, she was an architect, and she and her firm did both pro bono work and fee work for Ozone House in designing the new building that they built. And it was she that had the idea of applying the Solar Faithful model to Ozone House. So in 2019, LLC partners were recruited, and you can see a bunch of other dates. And if you drop to the bottom, we project that everything will go live here in the next month to month and a half. Our power purchase agreement is finalized and just needs to be signed. And we expect that the solar array, which is now installed, the interconnection will be done by DTE, meaning that it can flow into the grid, as well as the grid can then flow into the facility when making up any difference from that's necessary from the solar array. So this is some details on the installation. It's a fairly large array, 30 kilowatts, just to maybe put that also in perspective. We heard that a couple of other arrays are in the 20 kilowatt range. This typical household array is around maybe 5 kilowatts. I mean, that obviously there's a range there. So this is a pretty good size array. We have it roof mounted. Part of the roof, as I said, is asphalt shingle. That's where it's sloped. And then we also have a flat membrane roof. One really good thing is that from a life cycle consideration, we're not putting a new array on top of an old roof. Both are new and going on to the roof at the same time, and they both have a lifetime of 25 plus years or so, and they run concurrently. So it's not like after 10 or 15 years, the array has to be removed to repair sections of, or excuse me, the array doesn't have to be removed to repair sections of the roof. So we have a number of key governing documents that I'm going to go over on other slides. These started as IPL Solar Faithful templates, and we've simplified those in some respects. First of all, we have an operating agreement that's been signed by all of the LLC partners. Then we have the power purchase agreement that's signed by the LLC and Ozone House. And we have some attachments. In particular, we have an Excel spreadsheet that anybody could use. We've used to put in our assumptions, but those assumptions could change for anybody else's project in terms of what expected inflation rates are, the size of the array, how much energy it's going to generate, and so on and so forth. And I'll go into what some of the inputs and outputs of that are. And then finally, of course, we had a contract that was signed by the LLC and Distributed Power for the installation. So I'm going to go through each one of these at a very, very high level. And Leah has a copy of all of these documents. So we have the LLC, the four of us, we have an operating agreement. It includes elements that relate to what the vision and the mission of the LLC is. It talks about our ownership structure, how we manage the company, and it has a few legal aspects that are defined. And an appendix of the agreement is our purchase power agreement. So you can see this is a template that anybody else could use. And if you want to change anything in terms of any of these elements, you could certainly do that depending on your situation. Then we have a power purchasing agreement between ourselves and Ozone House. Ozone House, we were lucky that their board president is an attorney, and so she was very helpful in taking the template from Michigan IPL and crafting that specifically to our needs. There are 34 sections of that agreement, and you can see them, at least some of them listed here, and they basically govern all elements of our relationship from a financial and operational perspective. So what are some of the key provisions? This is a 20-year term. 100% of the electric power generated by the solar array is to be purchased by Ozone House. And as I mentioned, we're selling that to them at a 10% discount. So they immediately start to get a benefit. The LLC retains the exclusive right and title and interest in the system. And Ozone House itself can terminate the agreement anytime after 5 years and on any anniversary thereafter by purchasing the solar system for a fair market value of the system, which is defined in this spreadsheet. And this is actually the intention. The intention is that we only hold, meaning we, the LLC, only holds this system for 5 or 10 years until Ozone House raises the money to be able to buy the system. This way, we take advantage of the tax credits right from the beginning. The IRS says that we have to hold it for 5 years. So what we're saying essentially, or have agreed with Ozone House, is that anytime after we take advantage of those benefits, that they can then buy the system from us. And as I said, in order to be able to take advantage of those federal tax credit, we have to be set up in a way that we can show the IRS that we're making a very modest return. 2% is obviously not very much, but it's certainly better than money sitting in the bank. And this is something that's obviously very, very low risk. So we can both satisfy investors' interests as well as satisfy the requirements of the federal government. So I mentioned we have an Excel file or a spreadsheet that has multiple interlinked tabs, and it's developed to document and record all of the assumptions, calculate the financials and return on investment projections. We also record actuals in it, and it will also be used for not only what was projected in terms of power, but actually what was also actually generated and all of the payments. So there's a bunch of assumptions that go into this. We've defined those assumptions. You can look at those in the file. Like I said, any one of these could be modified by any other group using these templates. And then here's a bunch of outputs. Basically, what the payments then are expected in terms of payments from Ozone House to the LLC. What's the depreciation? What's our cash on hand? Basically all of the financials, including what the income is going to be, and so on and so forth. And then we generate, from Ozone House's perspective, the savings as a result of the PPA with the LLC. So you're never going to be able to read this other than looking at it later on, but you can see that there's all these calculations that are generated that I mentioned before, and all of that is documented in this Excel file. So there is obviously a contract that we had, and what we did here is we simply used Distributed Power LLC standard contract template. Every contractor is going to have their own contract. Many of them are, or most of them I would say, are very, very similar in terms of their content, and we just simply used Distributed Power's standard contract. So I'm getting close to the end here. From a tax consideration and filing, so as I mentioned, to be able to take this tax credit, we have to explicitly be operated as a for-profit organization. If we were audited by the IRS, we would have to demonstrate that we are for-profit, and we do that through our organizational structure and our annual financial operations. So while we're only charging 90% of the market rate for electricity, we've explicitly written into our organizational structure that we're getting this 2% return, and that return is generated through both the electricity payments from Ozone House as well as through the buyback price. And each year we will report income to the IRS based on our proceeds from the electric sales to Ozone House. Another consideration was liability insurance. We think this was important. And so first of all, during the installation phase, Distributed Power LLC carried the array as well as us as additional insured. From that point on, or actually basically it parallel and effective for the first year, we decided we want to have additional protection. So we purchased commercial liability insurance for $1 million per occurrence. So for example, I told you that we had trainees on site. If one of those people would have fallen or something like that, then there could have been a liability that we had to take care of. So we had that type of insurance in place to cover that risk. And then Ozone House is going to insure the solar property from this point on at a cost of only $225 a year. So we have basically all liability concerns addressed from the very beginning on through the operation, and eventually then when Ozone House takes over ownership of the array. And then lastly, we had to set up banking. The LLC had to open an account at Fidelity, and this is just an example of something that took more effort, and by having done this, we can share what we did with others, so hopefully would eliminate those kinds of bumps in the road that we had along the way. So this is my second to last slide. Lessons learned. First of all, if you're interested in doing this for a nonprofit, for a church, for a school system, whatever, do this as soon as possible because of the declining federal tax credits. It could be that those are changed, but right now these are the ones that have been passed into law by Congress. And what's important, and this is why it was important for us to do this at the end of last year, if you install 5% of the value of the solar installation in any given year, then you can take advantage of the tax credit. So if someone got going in 2020 and had 5%, for example, invested in the solar modules, then you would be able to take the full 26% tax credit. In terms of our documents, each situation is unique in terms of the partners, in terms of the interest of those partners. So plan time for multiple meetings to be able to finalize the content of those documents. And our advice is keep it simple. These documents are still fairly complex, but as I said, we have good templates that I think basically anybody else can use. And then the same thing applies to this Excel model. You are welcome to take our Excel model and substitute all of your own information into it, and it should work just fine. And then lastly, we think it's best to assemble a diverse host and LLC team. The fact that we had a number of people with different skill sets and different backgrounds helped us a lot. Everyone was able to contribute positively to the project. And basically, we're done. We just need to sign on the dotted line, flip the lever with DTE, and then we go into more or less maintenance mode. So if you have any questions, you can certainly pose them this afternoon, right now, or you could contact me at this email address. And that's it. And I'm going to leave the slides up in case somebody has a question where I need to go back and refer to one.
John, thank you very much for that exciting, very thorough and inspirational coverage of your project, and good luck as it launches.
Thanks.
In the next couple of weeks. So first of all, if anybody has any questions right now, it would be a good time to ask. Just unmute yourself and go, or put in a chat question if you prefer to do that. And
can you hear me now?
yes, it's John Sarver.
Hi, John.
You can actually hear me.
Yes, John, you're on.
I did something. I'm not sure what I did, but I did something. My question for you, John, is with respect to the federal tax credits, did the actual LLC take advantage of those federal tax credits, or some of the individual partners?
So the individual partners will. So actually in 2019, it didn't have any impact because the PPA was not in effect yet and we weren't delivering. So this will happen for us first in our taxes for 2020, but we will be able to take advantage of the 30%.
Okay, do we have any other questions? There's a lot here. Leah has information on that, which we can share after the meeting. And I would like to know if we could, before we get started in what's next kind of questions, hear from Leah on Michigan IPL and how some of these activities on the local and local group compare to what Michigan IPL is doing and will do in the future. Leah, would you like to address us?
Sure thing, yeah. I wonder, John, if you stop screen sharing,
Yes.
then we can move back to the view where we can see a lot of faces. Cool.
By the way, I'm John Sarver. I'm going to double check my statement there. When I say this, actually, I'm not sure. Our CFO, Peter Wolf, did the tax information. And so he's going to, I'll get in touch with him and I'll get back with you and I'll share that with you as well as with Leah.
Right on. So yeah, so I just want to thank our presenters today who did a great job. I love how David and Rich over at Haslett Sanctuary are modeling for us physical distancing. Look at that, 6 feet between them in the room. Great work, guys. Also, yeah, I just want to say it was really great to hear what everybody is doing in their congregations. You know, the problems that we face with climate destabilization are so big, and sometimes it feels like we are just toiling away. And so to be with you all today and to hear about what you're doing was just gratifying. And whoa, how cool is it about the Islamic Center pledging to help their neighbors? So excited about that. And I think really something that we could see a lot of congregations doing. So that's really cool. So I'll be sharing the link to the Google folder that's got all of these resources in it. Yeah, I don't think I want to say much more than that. I'll instead cede the time and just open up space for conversation, but just feeling really grateful and happy to be connecting with you all this morning. And I hope that we can, as Michigan IPL, do whatever we can just to be a connector and a convener and to allow you all to share your stories with each other.
So at this point, we've got an idea of what people have been working on their own in different and related fields. Usually in this kind of context, then it's going to take some more discussion where people have maybe identified sources of information or partners or people that they would like to follow up with. One way that we could do that is starting with an email list of a contact person for each organization who would make sure that information gets out about we're going to have a Zoom meeting or even a face meeting at some point, or here is a particular issue that we would like you to know. And so I would first suggest is if people would like the idea of being included on an email list where we could send to all with these ideas. If that's fine, then you can just put your thumbs up. It makes it simpler. And if your audio is off, or if your video is off, that sounds fine. Sarah Allen, I don't know that I have your email. If you could make sure that you, let's see, you must have been contacted by someone who else. If you could make sure that you send it to, if you could put it in the chat, then we'll be able to copy that down. I think most people, well, let's see, what would be the easiest way to make sure we get all these emails? Leah, would you agree to be the person who gets this email list? Okay, yes. So Leah.
Sure thing, and I just put my own email address, which is just director@MIIPL.org. I put that into the chat. For those of you on the phone, you can't see the chat, so I'll just say it again, director@MIIPL.org. You can either drop your email into the chat or you can just send me a note and we'll make sure you get connected.
Great. And so if somebody would like to pipe up at this point saying, what about if we did this thing? Like Ramona, are you inspired by any of the discussions you've heard today? Do you have any thoughts?
Yes, I'm absolutely inspired. I have to admit some of the PPA stuff was over my head, so I want to sort through that a little more. But the conversation from each of the houses of worship and the organizations, that was very exciting to me. And I've been taking notes like crazy. And so, yeah, I would love to have a way that we could have some kind of organization or way to contact each other and get ideas or ask for resources or help. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
David, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Oh, sorry. Mm-hmm. Sally Garrett, I see that you're on our list also. A number of congregations have talked about their work with native plants and planning, and I wonder if you have some thoughts about that. Maybe you probably know Bill Schneider. Let's see, Sally is still muted. If you wanted to say something, you have to undo your mute button.
All right, how's that?
Good.
Yes, I do know Bill. He, as was mentioned earlier, is the owner of Wild Type Nursery in Mason. We at Haslett Community Church, for those of you who don't know, have a memorial garden that is planted with all Michigan native plants. So that's a way of introducing to both the congregation and the general public what their options are in terms of species that they could use in plantings around their facilities. We're currently working on extending our native plantings around the south side of our building. And it is my hope, and I believe the hope of our green team and many others within our congregation, that as time goes on, that we can reduce our lawn and replace with more natives that not only provide habitat for insects and other pollinators, but you know, all other sorts of animals, as well as reducing our need for water and fertilizers and pesticides, and also a means of sequestering carbon.
Thank you, Sally.
Mm-hmm.
John Sarver and several other local activists were quite proactive about alerting a number of people here about upcoming discussions at the state legislature. 3 bills moving through the Michigan State Senate would facilitate development of solar by removing a cap that's currently in place that limits how many people can put a solar panel on their roof. These bills, which 2 of them are sponsored by Republican senators, 1 by a Democratic senator, would in different ways make it easier to implement. And at least for a while, when people were meeting face to face, then the public came into the hearings, and there was quite a bit of testimony in support of the legislation, except the utilities weren't in support because it didn't really fit their business model. But that's another way that having people networked can make real change at a larger level. Certainly, there were a number of people in our congregation who actually went to the hearings. Because we have a stake in solar, we've got panels on our roof. And that's a way that I think can bridge from the local to the larger societal. And that would be another way that different groups, houses of worship could contribute. It was interesting that the kind of input that the energy and technology panel got was from solar installers, who are small businesses for the most part, from West Bloomfield High School, who had put in a solar project, so the next generation, their green team. And there were no voices from the faith community. That is, when we're arguing about pennies and utility regulations, do we really have the big picture? And it was unfortunate, perhaps, that none of those groups could represent that. We're your constituents, and from this perspective, looking for the next generations, we know that we need to promote these kind of renewable technologies because the current model is unworkable, and so that's another direction that we might go in. Are there any other particular areas that our current participants are interested in hearing more about, developing or seeing if they have partners.
Here is Ana Vasquez.
Ana, please speak, yes.
We in the Meridian Green team, we are very interested in reducing the use of plastics. In particular, for our school, we are interested in finding alternatives to the foam food trays. But in general, we want to find solutions for recycling and reducing the use of plastics as an initial step in the school, but it's a topic that in general we're very interested.
Thank you, Anna. Okay. So,
if I could chime in, this is John Mursky real briefly in support of reducing turf grass and using native wildflowers and grasses. There's another neighbor in the Lansing area, Michigan Wildflower Farms, that sells seed. I've personally shopped at Wild Things, so that's a great partner. But if you want to do a larger tract, then starting from seed makes a lot of sense. And that's a good Michigan company in Portland, Michigan, just northwest of Lansing. The company that I worked for, we took very large tracts of turf grass and almost completely eliminated that. And I've done it also here in my home. So I encourage everybody to consider doing that.
thank you very much, John. So all the way from the complex legal documents to something that you can run your feet through. That's excellent. Yes, Sarah, please.
So I'd like to ask for the perspective of teaching people in our communities who are lower income, who are not going to be able to buy solar panels for their community or that such a thing. And I'm not talking about for necessarily a certain thing like Haven House, but just individually of teaching for example, if I put my Community of Christ hat on, not Meridian Green Team, but Community of Christ hat on, we have people that come into our church every Wednesday for hot dogs who are in the community who I think need to be learning about this stuff as well. They may not necessarily be in that position to be able to afford to purchase solar panels, but I think it's incredibly important to include them into the conversation of teaching them. And so how we do that in perspective of creating ways of having, I don't know, maybe some sort of educational thing in our churches, like if Community of Christ were to host something on a Wednesday night as they ate their hot dogs, that kind of thing, it may not be the kind of thing where they have enough money to be supporting in the monetary way, but it's something that we need to be doing as part of teaching our communities as a whole of what it means to be environmentally friendly and environmentally thinking. So I think that's an important aspect that we need to include in what we're doing as well.
Sarah, that's a really valuable contribution. I think that there are some promising avenues and there are also some thorny questions that have been solved. Chart House Energy is a company in Muskegon which has put together PPAs, and through one contact and another, I talked to the principal there. So they just came out with a press release that they've installed a 645 kilowatt, so a large kilowatt setup in Muskegon Heights, a low-income community that'll provide about half of the electricity, siting these on top of some public spaces like the water treatment center. And they specifically recruited people from the community to be trained as solar installers and learn construction skills as a way of building their skill set and resume. And it sounds a lot like what they were doing with Ozone House project. Another way that I think that low-income communities can benefit from these kind of developments is if nonprofits that serve them are able to save on their utility bills through renewable projects, then that frees up their resources to help in other ways. But I think that it is, it's a standard go-to argument from our state utilities that we don't support developing rooftop solar projects because only rich people will benefit and poor people will carry the load. And it's an argument that is often used to get what they want, which in many ways really doesn't help low-income communities. But I think it's a question that needs to be answered. So thank you for bringing that up. David has his hand up.
Yes, the last question got me thinking about other types of things that we can encourage people to do in light of the crisis that we're living through. I'm remembering, for example, as a child during World War II, having people develop victory gardens in order to grow their own food because food wasn't as available. I don't know if that's appropriate for a time like now, but something like that, or other ways of talking to people about how to conserve what they have or how to recycle what they have, might be a way of helping people who are both low income as well as other people to try out some new lifestyle models that are environmentally friendly, but are also helpful to people during a time of emergence of economic difficulty. I don't know if someone could take that idea and do something with it. That's just a thought that's come to mind as we've had this conversation.
I think we heard a little bit about that from Jim Detchen with the Edgewood Church's emphasis on rethinking our diet, our planet-destructive, meat-heavy diet. And I think that that's a theme that also green teams are in a unique position to introduce, for instance, at church potlucks and things like that, where you might be able to promote that. So I think it's quite interesting that there are many different kinds of actions that are either at the very personal level or at the small group level that bridge to bigger societal changes. And what I would propose here is those who are interested explore the idea of just affiliating informally as a mid-Michigan chapter of IPL that allows us to use the resources and organization of IPL and the Zoom, for instance, and then identify some of these different categories that we might continue these conversations in. There may be some congregations or individuals in those who are particularly going to focus on one or another. Smaller meetings might be more effective for following up on particular things. And then we could get together again in a larger group setting to report on what our plans are. I have no idea how long we're going to be in the virtual space. I don't think anybody does. It depends a lot on things that are really unpredictable. But I think that there's a lot that can be done. In the meantime, I'm really happy that people came out for our online solar summit because it's the current pandemic is something that is predictable, was predictable, and it won't be the last one. Bats have more viruses in them, and if we don't get them from bats, we could get them from camels, which was another coronavirus source. So those kind of predictable societal disruptions are out there, but with global climate change, we're talking about changes and challenges of the size that we can't even model or predict. In fact, the climate experts tell us that, well, our models are all over the place. So it's really important then, I think, to tackle these long-range issues in ways that we can be effective. And I'm really heartened by hearing of so many individual initiatives that if we can link them together, I think we'll be able to be much more effective. Following the meeting then, Leah is going to just send out a note to our email list to check, do you want to be on this email list? Are you the contact person for the group in charge? And then we'll organize another meeting based on some of the different themes we've got, and we'll probably put a doodle poll or something together asking, would you like to meet to talk about X on such and such time? We have to figure that out, right, Leah? We haven't done this exactly before, but I think that we can do that. Is Pastor Betsy still here? I can't see everybody who's online.
I am still here, yes.
Yes. So you sort of opened us up, and I wonder if you could just close us out with a few words, because you're always very encouraging and inspirational.
No pressure.
I told you wouldn't have to do it, but I think it would be a good idea.
Well, I am really encouraged by the ideas that have been shared today, and by the questions that have been asked, and just all of the participation in so many different avenues. And I echo what David was getting at too. I think we are wrapped up in this pandemic crisis as we sort of need to be careful and do what we can do, and to care for our neighbors close by and around the world, and yet to vision about what can be in the future is a really hopeful place to be. So I'm encouraged by everyone's commitment to help make the world a better place today and tomorrow and for future generations. So I applaud all of you, and I look forward to future conversations. So thanks to all for being here, for David and Rich and Leah for keeping us organized, John Mirsky for his presentation, but really to all of you for what you've contributed and asked.
Thank you very much, Betsy. And with that, that closes out our first Solar Summit. And let's see where we can go from here. It was great to meet many of you for the first time, and very exciting to hear about all the activities that are going on. Thanks again. Thanks for our speakers.
Thank you, David. Thanks for all the work you did.
Yes, thanks so much. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you,
Take
and
care
bye,
of
everyone.
yourselves.
Stay safe.